Hello again and welcome back. Thanks for watching. So, we're starting to see the early signs of cracks in the economy, whether it's Japan or Bitcoin or whatever the case may be. There's so much news out there, I can't even keep track. Things are going according to schedule. Some may say not so good. Some will say this is great news. Anyway, depending on where you are and what you've invested in or not invested in, I guess it's all relative. But anyway, this week I'm going to get into most or a lot of the statistics from across the country for July and some other random charts just with some interesting real estate data. So let's start this off with this first chart here. Now, this chart shows all of the vacant new listings that came to market, the for sale listings that came to market in the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board data. And this data represents about 25% of all listings in Canada. Just so you know, so this is not just a small area. This is greater than the Greater Toronto Area. This expands further than those boundaries. There's a lot of boards that have amalgamated their data into the system now. So again, this year so far, it's 32% of all listings, all new listings that came on the market for sale have been vacant. And when you compare that to 2014, it's 22%. So a huge increase. That's almost a 50% increase in the number of vacant listings compared with 10 years ago. This is a representation of the investment activity in the market, and the investors have now realized that, and they're going to keep realizing that you're not going to be able to wait for the market to recover into some, astronomically high prices, higher than they even were, and to get their money back. They're realizing they're not going to get their money back, and they're going to have to sell them at a loss or whatever the case may be. Next, I want to shed some light on how well the governments have made out, and specifically the provincial governments. So, looking at this chart here, this is the land transfer tax or title transfer fee, as some areas or provinces call it, by area. And this is based on an $800,000 home. And some major areas in Canada, and of course I have Toronto in there because Ontario has a land transfer tax, but in Toronto you have to match that because you have to give it to the municipality also. So half goes to the province and half goes to the municipality. So it's double land transfer tax in Toronto. Looking at the areas for an $800,000 home and how much the government is taking when you do that transaction, when you purchase one. So of course, Calgary's the lowest. They don't actually have a land transfer tax. They just have a title transfer fee of some kind. Regina, $3,200. St. John's, $3,260. Fredericton, $8,000. Montreal, of course, it's over $10,000. Halifax, 12 grand. Ottawa, 12,000, almost $500. Winnipeg's pretty high for what it is there, a prairie province, but over $13,000. Vancouver, of course, it's not unexpected there, $14,000. Actually, I want to go back to Ottawa because Ottawa is a representative of the rest of Ontario besides Toronto. And then at the end, you have it over $10,000 higher than the highest one, Toronto. So to buy an $800,000 home, the Toronto, the municipality is making 12,000 whatever $500, and the province is making $12,500. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is while homes have doubled in price, the government has been making out even better. So here, my next chart, land transfer tax increase when homes increase 100%. So theoretically, homes in Canada are not 100% from what they were, 6 or 7 years ago. They're probably 70, 80%, depending on the area you are. But, it would have been over a decade or at least a decade since home prices have doubled now, because they did double, but then they dropped. So we're not actually double compared to, 7 or 8 years ago. But regardless, here is what the municipalities or the province, in whichever case here, is taking when your house has doubled. You can see Calgary, they're not even taking 100% of like the house prices have gone up. They're only taking 74% on their fee. St. John's pretty neutral there. House prices doubled. Well, their land transfer tax went up 96%. So you're saving 4% there. Regina, they're even. Prices go up 100%. They take 100% more on the land transfer tax. Same with Fredericton, Halifax. Now in Vancouver, when your house went up 100%, they're collecting 133% more taxes or more land transfer tax than you would pay otherwise. So, and this again, this is a provincial land transfer tax in Vancouver or in BC. But again, I'm doing the major metropolitan areas here just to give it some substance. And in Montreal, Quebec, when your price went up, when your house was go up 100%, they're actually taking 130% more land transfer tax. Winnipeg, 142% more. And of course, in Ontario, Ontario's almost taking triple. So your house price is doubled, but they're making almost triple the land transfer tax. And now the problem with the land transfer tax is most of them are on a tiered system where for the first 55,000 it's 0.5%, for the next it's 1%. Once you get over a certain price point, it goes up to 2 and 2.5%. These land transfer tax tiers were made when house prices were lower, a lot lower, 100,000, 200,000, $300,000. It was almost like a wealth tax. When you're buying a house that's over 4 or 500,000, you're paying more to the province because it's a wealth tax, sort of, right? These were not made when the average house price in Canada was $700,000. This is not why they're tiered this way. So they haven't adjusted their tiers and they're collecting all this money. So you're paying double for a house, but they're making almost triple on the land transfer tax. So they love it. They've been pulling in billions and billions of dollars. And there's actually a study out there. Someone tagged it on X, and I'll give you the link in the description here, and I'll put a quick screenshot on the screen here, where this person, I believe it was a girl, she went through and compared the land transfer tax and did a study on it. So with the actual numbers, so you can see how much these provinces are collecting and the city in Toronto in their case. The next chart is something I've discussed before. It's the ratio of residential sales to leases by year. And again, this is the TREB data. Approximately 25% of the transactions in Canada go through here. So this is pretty representative of for the country. This is all areas here as of August 5th this year. So, of course, 2024 only has partial year, but it is percentage based, so it is relevant. And you can see back in 2014, 24% of the transactions on this board, on the Toronto Real Estate Board, were leases. 76% were sales, and that's a pretty healthy number. And yeah, it started to creep up. 2021, it was 32%. Nothing. It was that's actually is significant. But as you can see, 2022, 2023, and 2024 have just skyrocketed. It's now 48% of all transactions are leases on the Toronto Real Estate Board, and 52% are sales. Now, this is not just in GTA. These are a lot of areas surrounding the GTA. Anyone that lists on the Toronto Real Estate Board, again, 78 to 80,000 members that list on there. And there's about 160,000 realtors in Canada, or 160,000 plus, they say. So that's almost half of the realtors in Canada are listing on this board. And one thing I want to note, when they talk about sales being down, sales are at a decade low. Depending on the area that you're in, they're at a very low point, and per capita, they're super low. But when they're talking about the sales, they're obviously not including leases. When you include leases in the data, in the total transaction data, it's actually pretty healthy numbers. They're not at all-time lows. They're actually trending almost like they should be, with increases year over year. So yeah, again, we're seeing a lot more leases percentage-wise and in the actual raw numbers. So it is representative that even though the sales are down, there is still transactions happening with people moving in and moving out of homes. Here is the same data, but it's just for the GTA, just those areas in the Greater Toronto Area. And you can see back in 2014, instead of 24% being leases, it was 30%, so a little bit higher. And of course, as time goes on, now it's like 60-40, 59-41. So 59% of the transactions in the GTA are leases and 41% are sales. So there's more leases. And I realized this last year, I've talked about this last year, where agents are now leasing more properties than they're selling. Of course, that's going to affect their income too. And what's happened is those sales have decreased, but they've been replaced by leases. So that would, of course, negatively affect income because they're making a small fraction of what they would make from a sale, right? When you're leasing a place and it's a big hassle and whatever else. But yeah, so there's still lots of transactions happening, but they're just not sales. And before I get into the July data, one more chart here. This was actually a good kind of debate that happened on X this week, and it was just about. It was one of my followers. You probably might be watching now, but it was a good-hearted debate, nothing personal. And actually, he called me and we talked about it. And he had quoted some numbers year over year, and he had just used detached data in Toronto. And I said he was cherry picking data and whatever. It's when you're online, comes across a little more harsh than it would in a phone call or in real life. But and I'm guilty too, right? I'm obviously biased towards wanting the market to go down and become more affordable for people. And it's not that he wants it to go up, but he was just looking at detached because that's what he's looking at. So that made me think, look, let's look at the different property types to see how they fared in the market since the peak. So here they are in this chart here. So this is the average price from the peak of February 2022. Actually, it's January 2022, but you can see the peak right after there on the left-hand side to July 2024. And of course, the most recent month's data that we have right now, I wanted to see how it's fared from then until now, or from the peak until now. Detached and semi-detached have dropped percentage-wise and, of course, dollar-wise more than the townhouses and the apartments, which are mainly condos. So the safest investment would have been an apartment condo, and you would have lost 12% if you had bought it at the peak. And actually, their peak was March, believe it or not, 2022. But again, February was pretty close. It was only a few $1,000s difference. So an apartment, you would have lost 12%, and a detached, you would have lost almost double, 23% in the value. And we hear that the condo market is getting killed and, people aren't closing on them. Well, they're at a lower price point, so they're less vulnerable to these losses, right? Little to gain, little to lose, more to gain, more to lose. That's always the way it is. And of course, we think of the detached market as being somewhat as a safer bet. But as you can see, and this is a lot of listings included in this data, they have lost almost double from what the small ones have. And the townhouses are in the middle, which makes sense. Okay, now on to July data. Not everywhere is in these. It's still early in the month, so not everyone's reported. Ottawa hasn't reported. Some places in BC, the East Coast, Atlantic provinces, none of them have reported, so I don't have those in there or in here, but I do have a lot of places. Let's start with the month-over-month price change from June to July this year for the average MLS price. And taking the cake by a mile at the top is Lakelands in Ontario. This is Muskoka and Cottage Country. They had a 21.4% drop in their average price from June to July this year, which is insane. It was like $180,000. Now, they do have big swings because there's not a lot of data in there, not a lot of sales. Like there's still 100, over 100, 150 to 200 sales from what my memory tells me. But their swings are insane. Of course, they do have swings in the winter when there's ice in and ice out, and cottages, lakefront or waterfront cottages start selling. But July last year, they actually had a small increase in their average price. This year, they have a big decrease. Again, probably should have used median there, but even the median would have been pretty volatile looking. So anyway, yeah, huge change there. And again, I do see 10% increases and 15% increases in the spring in that same place. So again, not unusual to see big changes, but that's a big drop there. That's huge. York Region down 6.6% month over month. Northumberland Hills down 6.5%. Toronto down 6.4%. That's a big drop for Toronto in 1 month. Hamilton Burlington down 5.4%. Kingston and area down 5%. Greater Vancouver down almost 5%. Now take note, these are big regions that are down these big numbers. So just pretty volatile numbers here. And again, these aren't small places that usually have big swings because of small amounts of data. These guys have huge amounts of data, lots of sales. So yeah, not like one big sale would swing the data here. Southern Georgian Bay down 4.4%. Peel region down 4.2%. London area down 3.6%. Huron down 3.4%. Brantford, down 3%. Niagara region, where I'm from, down 2.9%, almost 3%. Calgary, down almost 3%. Durham region, down 1.7%. Halton, down 1.1%. Cambridge, down just almost 1%. Guelph, almost 1%. Province of Quebec, almost 1%. Montreal, almost 1%. Peterborough, pretty even there. Edmonton, up 0.2, so pretty even there. I think it was like $1,000 that equates to in Edmonton. Fraser Valley up 0.5% month over month. That was about 5 grand. We'll see in the next chart. Victoria up marginally, just 0.5% or so. Woodstock, Ingersoll up 1.1%. Simcoe and District up 1.3%. Barrie and District up 2.4%. Grey Bruce, Owen Sound up 4.3%. And Windsor, Essex up 4.7%, but they did get killed last month on the downside. Now moving on to the percent change from the peak. A lot of these places would have peaked in 2022, but some of them did peak this year. I've talked about them in previous videos, but yeah, let's look here. Southern Georgian Bay, almost 26% down from their peak. Durham region, 25%. Lots of 20% pluses here. Woodstock, Ingersoll, almost 25%. Brantford, 24%. Cambridge, 24% down. Lakelands, Muskoka, down 23% from their peak. Northumberland Hills, down almost 23%. Peel, 22.5% down from their peak. Peterborough, down 22.5%. Guelph, down 21%. London area, down 21%. Fraser Valley, down 20%. Hamilton, Burlington, down 20%. Grey Bruce, Owen Sound, down 19%. Halton, 19% down. Windsor, Essex, down 16.8%. Niagara region, down 16.6%. Huron, Perth, down 16%. Barrie and District, down 16%. Kingston area, 16%. York, down 16%. Simcoe and District, down 15%. Toronto, down 12%. Victoria, down 10%. Greater Vancouver, down 4.7%. They were even last month, or for the last couple of months, had reached all-time highs or reached their previous all-time high. Calgary, down 2.7% from their all-time high this year. Province of Quebec, down just under 1% from their all-time high this year. Same with Montreal. And Edmonton, down just 0.2% from their all-time high, which was in the last couple of months also. And putting that in dollar terms, 306,000 Durham region is down from their peak. Peel's down 302,000. Halton down 292. Southern Georgian Bay $288,000. Fraser Valley $265,000. York region down 246,000. Cambridge down 245. Lakelands down 245. Guelph down 227,000. Brantford down 222,000. That's a lot for Brantford because their prices are not as high as the rest of those places. Hamilton, Burlington down 216,000. Woodstock, Ingersoll down 213,000. Northumberland Hills down 204. Peterborough 198. London area 179. Barrie and District 166. Grey Bruce, Owen Sound down 153. Same with Toronto, 153,000. Niagara region, where I'm from, 145 grand down. Simcoe and District down 125. Huron, Perth down 122. 121 in Windsor, Essex. Kingston and area down 117%. Victoria down $111,000. Greater Vancouver, 64 grand. Again, not a lot for that area. Calgary down 17,000 from their all-time peak in June. Province of Quebec down 4 grand. Same with Montreal. And Edmonton down just $1,000 from their all-time high. And lastly, let's look at the market balance. This is the sales to new listings ratio. Who's in a buyer's market, who's in a seller's market, and who's in a balanced market. So obviously all the green here are the buyer's markets. Now looking at Peel's or, Brampton, Mississauga area, they are below 30%. It's not too often I see places below 30%. That's abysmal. It's pretty bad for such a major metropolitan area like that. That's probably one of the lowest numbers I've seen in an area like that since I've been studying this or since I've been watching it. But again, look at Toronto, 30%, York, 31%, heavily into buyer's markets right now, all these places. And we're almost have as many buyer's markets as we do balanced markets. There's 12 areas in here that are in buyer's markets and 13 that are in neutral or balanced markets. And you can see the balanced markets there. London barely in a balanced market. Peterborough, same thing. Greater Vancouver, they're teetering on a buyer's market there. Lakelands, Muskoka, Hamilton, Burlington, Kingston area, Huron, Perth, Cambridge, Woodstock, Ingersoll, Victoria, Simcoe District, Guelph, and Grey Bruce Owen Sounds, all in in balanced markets. Then we have the usual suspects in the sellers market. We have Calgary, province of Quebec, Montreal, and Edmonton. Edmonton's actually an overheated sellers market right now. And yes, that chart did look like an Irish flag, in case you were wondering. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.